Oh, if it's TYT, then you know you're going to get some dishonesty. It's just the good thing is that there's at least one person on the panel that kind of sets things straight. However, before we get to that, let's look at this very odd clip here.
Say after he was assassinated and got up with his fist raised that was a pretty badass move. That was your
after the attempted assassination, just to be clear.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I don't know why everyone, as that's part of the Democratic Party machine, feels that it's their duty to lie in every instance. But can you just give a shout out to a guy who just got hit with a bullet and then put his hand up in the air and said, fight, 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 and he put himself out there. He was not totally surrounded. He was surrounded by Secret Service, which, by the way, they should get some credit for putting their life on the line, and they were literally willing to take a bullet for him, right? But he poked his head out, and he put his arm out, and that was courageous. It was courage under fire, and I've called Trump a coward 1,000 times, but he wasn't that night or that day. He was strong and he was brave, and anybody can see that. That's the problem with the Democrats. We have eyes and ears, and they keep trying to gaslight us because they think they control all of mainstream media. And so they can gaslight you no matter what, because mainstream media will just lie to you and pretend that we live in an alternate reality.
Wow, Cenk. Wow. Especially given the fact that you said this the day of the actual shooting.
Trump's been shot. When he got up, he was bleeding from the ear, but he seemed perfectly fine. He's not dead. He's fine. Like, my best guess, and this is just a guess because he was just shot, is that he was, it looked like a BB gun or something.
But as I opened with, there is one person on the panel who seems to be getting the message.
Trump apparently personally writing portions of it. And what's interesting is how Trump's role ended up moderating certain contentious policy issues for the Republican Party, but I actually think it was a smart political move because the extremists in the Republican Party were actually pushing for loser policy ideas. And I think Trump, to his credit, realizes, oh, this is actually gonna hurt the chances of Republicans winning congressional races and potentially Donald Trump himself in the general election, although, Democrats decided to provide cover for Biden, who is now very likely going to lose to Trump if he stays in the race. Now,
make sure you guys stick around for the full video because we've obviously got a lot to talk about here. Now, that little clip I just showed you guys, that right there will be recirculating a little bit later on this week on this channel. Just give you guys a bit of a heads up because we're going to talk about what happens to the far left after this, because a lot of takes have been thrown out there and you've got a lot of people out there screaming both sides are bad, which I think at this moment in time, given the fact that one side once again resorted to political violence, I think that a lot of people right now are looking at this and saying, you know what, maybe we should not allow far leftists to be anywhere near power or anywhere near any form of cultural institution, anything like that. But we'll talk more about that later on this week. Also, there's a curious case of Destiny and the tweets that he's been sending out, and a lot of people are trying to say something is wrong with him, and I'm here to let you guys know right now that, no, this one here is who the hell he always was. I mean, hell, he just got into it with Anna Kasparian, of all people, over Sean O'Brien, the Teamsters Union's speech at the RNC. Odd, too, that Anna Kasparian is complimenting anybody at the RNC. However, I've been saying for a while that there has been a bit of a change in the direction of Anna Kasparian, at least on some issues. I'm not saying that she's about to start posting to PragerU or giving a story about how it was that she left the left, but still at the same time, though, she has been red pill on a few issues. And this right here seems to be another one of those times where Anna got it correct versus Cenk. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So the Republican National Convention this year has decided to go in a different direction on a few separate topics. For one, Donald Trump does not plan on running on any type of abortion bans or anything like that. Now, you're probably thinking, someone who's myself, who's very, very pro-life, you think that I would be against Donald Trump doing this, and I would be more in favor of him running on abortion bans or at least running a much, much more pro-life campaign, even though J.D. Vance's VP is the more pro-life person. Typically, when you take a vice president, especially on the Republican side, typically your VP pick is more conservative. Now, does that make me a hypocrite for voting for Donald Trump because Donald Trump's not running as hard on abortion? No, he sent it back to the states, which is actual federalism, letting the states decide. Now, am I fully in favor of what the left is doing? Hell no. I'm very, very pro-life. I think it's absolutely insane. My position is actually closer to something like what Seamus O'Coughlin at TMCast IRL, or when he's a guest over Freedom Tones, actually is what he does mostly. But my opinions, my feelings on are closer to him. So obviously, you're probably asking, well, if Donald Trump's not pro-life enough, why are you voting for him? Well, first and foremost, Trump's judges got Roe v. Wade overturned, which was the first step in an actual pro-life movement. A lot of these pro-life accounts, which I think have been hijacked by bad actors, some of these people even include Seth Dillon at the Babylon Bee. Yeah, I said that. Some of these people, I think, are using it as a grift, and they don't seem to understand, or they're being very dishonest about the fact that you've got to get elected in order to actually enact the laws to protect life. I understand that very well, and it's not so much vote Republican no matter who, because there are some Republican candidates, especially a couple this cycle, that if they had gotten the nomination, that I would have stayed home on when it came to Election Day. I say that now with the benefit of hindsight, but I never would have voted for Asa Hutchinson. I never would have voted for Chris Christie. And I definitely would have had to take a lot of Alka-Seltzers to vote for Nikki Haley. I might have even chosen to stay home. But then again, at the same time, though, the state I live in, the governor's race is on the ballot, so who the hell knows? Either way, though, Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson would have never gotten my vote. So basically, what Donald Trump has done is he chose to take the issue off the ballot, seeing how it is that it's an issue that, quite frankly, galvanizes single women to vote, keep things focused on the economy, crime, and foreign policy. Not a bad idea for this particular cycle. And yes, there are things, and of course, there are people who are speaking at the RNC that I'm not exactly okay, or at least I don't know how I feel about it. One such person was Amber Rose. Don't worry, we will get back to TYT here in a second. Just because she came out recently as a Trump supporter does not mean that you put the orator of the slut walk on the actual stage itself. But then again, though, given the fact that her speech was only about 5 minutes, I don't see a problem with her speaking in a very, very short amount of time. And most of the RNC audience, by the way, I hate to tell you this, don't actually know who she is. Still, though, extremely risky. Now, that right there, of course, feeds into this topic that we're talking about now, which is the RNC platform itself. And, of course, the first person who had to have a conversation about this was obviously Anna Kasparian, because she was obviously the one who started out the monologue. Now, here's the rest of that monologue that you guys saw at the very beginning of the video.
The document was apparently chopped down from 66 pages in 2016 to just 16 pages this year. And some are in fact complaining that it was developed behind closed doors and approved by delegates in just a few hours Monday morning. Now, some prominent rank and file evangelicals criticized the language for backpedaling on the GOP's longstanding promise to ban abortions nationally. But to be fair, I mean, Trump has said repeatedly on national television, publicly, that he's not gonna push for a national abortion ban, not because of his principles, but because he realizes it's a big loser for Republicans. That's the main reason why Republicans.
Okay, let me say this. While Anna is being honest as far as her actual beliefs and knowledge, she's still lacking. Typically, when Republicans run for president, and I know this because I'm a conservative, you typically want to vote for the most conservative person on the issues when it comes to the actual primaries themselves. The electability argument or electability argument always falls flat, especially when the person gets on the actual ballot itself, because there's a lot of conservatives that may have been alienated by previous positions that they quite frankly weren't going to vote for in the first place, and they probably were going to stay home. A great example of this was Mitt Romney back in 2012. Tea Party conservatives absolutely disliked Mitt Romney, and they didn't view him as any different than Obama, because when he was governor of Massachusetts, he introduced a health care plan that was very similar to what Obama had in the form of Obamacare. Also, previous comments, things that he had said before, the incident in South Carolina, the 47% comment where he actually did not double down. He did not actually fight back the right way, because in reality, if you listen to that clip, he said 47% of Obama voters, not 47% of Americans. And of course, he had an extremely weak campaign team, and he didn't strike back once Benghazi happened. Mitt Romney was without a doubt one of the weakest candidates the Republican Party ever produced, not just by himself alone, but also his campaign was terrible. Anna, I think, is getting this wrong because she, once again, did not do proper research into Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the most pro-life president right now in the country on record. And while that sounds like it's a contradiction to what Anna just said and what I just said about Anna, it really isn't. If you actually look into Donald Trump's past, he's never really and truly been in favor of, let's just say he's never really and truly been in favor of abortion bans. He's actually always been somewhat pro-choice, at least from the Bill Clinton or old school Bill Clinton perspective, which was safe, legal, and rare. Basically, what Trump's campaign is exactly what he ran on in 2016. The fact that you've got people calling for outright abortion or outright infanticide And of course, this also includes abortions in the third trimester and even the second trimester. Yeah, that right there is what Trump is running on. He's running against the radicals, and it's gone way too daggone far. As a matter of fact, the polls, in his polls consistently, if you ask people at what point in time is abortion too far, they normally say roughly 3 months. That's what I was initially thinking was maybe he should run a platform of, look, 3 months is as far as I would go. The truth be told is that people kind of bungle this a little bit, and they think to themselves, okay, so 16 weeks, 3 months. It's odd because for some odd reason, 16 weeks does not poll well for pro-lifers, but 3 months does, even though we all know 16 weeks is what? 4 months. Maybe you're thinking about it in lunar terms. I really don't know, but still the point is this right here. Typically, Republican candidates, you need to be very, very pro-life. However, things have gotten so crazy today, and of course, given the fact that this is typically tends to be a loser for Republican candidates, it might be best to stick to the issues of the day. And even some pro-life accounts, and I mentioned this earlier, have hijacked this and been the whole, well, I will never vote for Donald Trump because he's, and I'm like, if you stay home on election day, if you stay home and you don't vote for Donald Trump, this time next year, they would have gotten abortion all the way to the moment of birth passed. You need to put Trump back in office so that way we can get started on actually saving the country and saving a lot of babies. A lot of babies, by the way, have already been saved since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which, by the way, Donald Trump was the president that gave us the justices that did that. Just saying. Let's get back to this.
I thought there's a couple of things that are pretty dangerous in there, and I'll get to those in a minute. But overall, I thought, oh no, we're so going to lose. Obviously, because of Biden, we're already toast. But even if you were to get Biden out, we have some catching up to do. Why? Because that document is pretty populist.
It is.
And he keeps talking about the voters.
Yep.
I know for Democrats, they're like, whoa, who are those?
Yeah, the people that Democrats like to disrespect on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, so don't get me wrong. I know Trump's a con man. Nobody's talked more about what a con man he is than I have. And I know that the scary parts of that he might actually do. The parts where he protects Social Security and Medicare, not necessarily so. But as you read the document from an analysis point of view, I thought, this is going to be fairly effective. And he's taken out most of the crazy radical stuff.
Okay,
and the stuff
Cenk, for all of his faults, and there's even some sections here I did not include. I'll put the full clip in the description box for you guys, where he was saying, well, you know, Trump, normally a con man, this, that. Even though at the very, very beginning of the video, you obviously saw what he said on Breitbart. So I thought he was a coward. He's not a coward anymore. And of course, he also said Trump got shot with a BB gun, which I thought was absolutely stupid. But still at the same time, though, we all know Cenk is a very, very dishonest person. I don't think I need to say that again, but still, though, Cenk is not entirely wrong, though, when he says this is not a good platform for Democrats. Now, if this was 1996 or maybe even 2004 or hell, even 2012, I would say that the Democrats, this would actually be a slam dunk for them, especially given the fact that Republicans are not going as conservative on certain issues. But the point is this right here, the left has gone so far radical, and even the basic common people who are not politically involved or politically engaged that would think that Republicans were radical, they now see the political opposition taking a shot at the Republican candidate in the United States. Now, granted, this bit right here I think was actually done the day of or the day before. It's actually an old clip. Still, though, the point is this right here. The left has gone too far radical, and I think Cenk even knows that. By the way, Cenk is also somewhat responsible for that. And the Democrats are so weak, they probably would not be able to get the turnout to counter Trump's platform, which is exactly the reason why Trump probably adopted the platform that he did. I'm just simply saying. However, this video is about Anna Kasparian checking Cenk, so let's go ahead and get to that.
To tell you the things you want to hear, and to take out the ones you don't want, like abortion.
I'm gonna say something that you're gonna disagree with, but this is my view of Trump versus whoever the Democratic candidate typically is. Trump actually listens to his supporters. And I'm gonna give you a few examples from his first term. He was itching to go to war with Iran. You remember that? He was itching for it. But the America First MAGA crowd, they're kind of isolationists. They don't want.
Two things. Number one, wanting to go to war in Iran, he didn't really want to do that. He just bombed the living hell out of them. It's called peace through strength. Okay, some people think that if you bomb somebody, we're going to be going to war. No, that's always the case. It's called a behavioral correction thing, which is actually the much more preferable option. Anna, of course, is still getting educated on this, and she's never really and truly tried to get educated on this, but apparently she's getting educated on it now. But to Trump listening to his voters, look, I'm a Trump voter. And I'm here to tell you right now that I think he tries to listen. He tries the best he can to listen and tries as best he can to get what he needs done. The problem is, if you guys remember correctly, back when he got elected in 2016, and this is so easy to cut apart when you hear never Trumpers and people who are all very, very pro DeSantis, and they suddenly turn to never Trumpers and they start screaming, well, Trump never got anything done that he says, dude, it's called Congress. You have Congress and you have the Senate. You have two lower levels before the in the legislative branch before you get to the executive branch. You got to pass laws, and he didn't have a Senate or a Congress that was fully on board with him. Now he's got a Congress that's more on board with him and a Senate that could very, very well be on board with him. You got to do it that way. Not to mention, these people also tend to forget that there's three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial. I mean, civics is something that was never taught to these people, or they pretend like it never was, when more than likely it probably was at some point in time. But still, at the same time, though, I'm glad to see that at least somebody on the left is finally starting to see what is actually going down, but let's keep going.
So I remember seeing headlines and I remember seeing commentary from his supporters saying that they didn't want him to go to war with Iran, and he listened. There were other examples as well, but look, you're right that he does what it takes to win. And so if he thinks moderating the message on abortion might help him win, he's gonna do that. But at the end of the day, what's been clear to me is that he seems to have more respect for his constituents, for his base, than Democrats do. Okay, Democrats will look at the policies that Democratic voters want in favor, and they'll basically say, F off, you have to support us because the other guy is evil and dangerous. Whereas Trump actually listens to his voters, and that's the reason why he has an energized base. They're galvanized, they're super excited to vote for him.
I could have answered this before, but it's true. Trump does have an actual base that loves him. Biden does not. It's basically vote blue no matter who. If you take abortion off the table, they're less likely to vote, or at least the single women are. However, the thing you got to understand right quick about base is that it's normally the residual parts of the candidate, the residual voters. That's normally who decides the elections. That's, I think, what Trump is actually doing, is taking away the residual voters. Now, as far as Trump doing anything he can to win, well, the guy just did take a shot in the ear and got right back up. And if there wasn't proof that he wasn't in this right here till the end, then that right there should tell you something. I mean, Cenk himself was even forced to admit that Donald Trump was not a coward, even though he had said that he was hit with a BB gun prior. As far as Democrats is concerned and them not doing what it is for their voters, I think that what it is that they've decided not to answer the call for progressives, but I will explain that a little bit further on the other side of this next clip.
Even when Biden didn't have all these negative headlines following his disastrous debate performance, do you think Democratic voters were super jazzed to vote for him? Were they ever excited to vote for him?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm hearing people talking about Biden voters. I'm like, which Biden voters? So like, because for all the blue MAGA that's Biden voters, if you just told them the new leader is Kamala Harris or the new leader is Josh Shapiro, they'd be like, well, I'm voting for Josh Shapiro. So Biden doesn't have any voters who care about him. All of his voters just say, I will vote for anything Democratic leadership puts up in front of me. So his personal voters are zero.
Going right back to voting blue no matter who. This is kind of how Democrat voters operate, and there's another reason for that. But there's another section of this video that I think kind of ties it all together, because Anna does bite back at Cenk here again. But I want to say this before we get to that clip, and I'm going to probably end the video on this note too at the same time. When you talk about Democrat voters not getting what they want, I touched on this in the previous clip. It's mostly the progressives, because most of what the progressives want is absolute insanity. People who just don't want any form of responsibility. You know, we know about the abortion thing all the way to the moment of birth and infanticide. Let me say this. Democrats, when they first got back into office, they first had power. They had 50, if you say 51 senators total, if you count Kamala Harris as a tie-breaking vote. What they didn't tell their voters is that they needed 60 votes in the Senate to get the stuff they needed passed. The Voting Rights Act, which would have been legislation. What else? Oh, that's right, abortion all the way to the moment of birth. You would have needed 60 votes to actually make a law. 51 votes is for confirmations, for Supreme Court justices, budget, stuff like that. Like I said, civics never got taught to these people. And that also makes me think about something really quick. How come these people never actually passed an actual comprehensive abortion law to legalize or codify it? Well, it's because what the hell progressives wanted was just too loony and too radical, and moderate Democrats realized they would probably lose their seats. Most people are not in favor of the crap that the Democratic Party, the current Democratic Party, especially the Democratic Party controlled by progressives, are in favor of. But we'll talk more about that in my video that I have planned on what happens to the left a little bit later on this week, because the way they acted after the assassination pretty much sealed their fate long term. But let's go ahead and finish this off.
Bombing, etc. But on the other hand, he would do crazy things all the time, and that's why we were all on edge. And he would lie to you and tell you he was a populist and then pass a giant tax cut for corporations. The most record-breaking gift to corporate rule that any president's ever done. So let's not forget that he's actually totally full of crap. So, but I separated out to reality and the policies and what's smart politics in terms of what's gonna help him get elected or not, right? So when you look at smart politics, I look at number 5 and number 6 on this list. And they say, stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Now, can he really do that? Not really. And the idea of doing the tariffs will lead to more inflation and is a bad idea. But
pause for a second though on the tariffs. Look, we didn't cover the story mostly because we didn't have time, but Biden continued with those tariffs. Not only did he continue, he engaged in even more protectionism when it comes to China. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No. This right here also shows you the dishonesty of TYT, especially Cenk. Cenk claims to be a progressive. He claims to be a Bernie Sanders guy. But if you guys remember correctly, when Bernie Sanders ran for president in 2016, he was saying that open borders was a Koch brothers proposal. He was saying the stuff that people in the Midwest like, protectionism, not full-blown free market. Now, me personally, I am a free market guy. I do believe in protectionism to a certain extent, but I also believe that a proper enforcement on the books of what China is doing, keeping them from actually touching things and properly punishing them for breaking the rules, that right there would correct a lot of the problems that we're seeing today, because China really, to tell you the truth, is really a paper tiger, or at least they are in the way. I'll put it this way here. When you actually get below the surface of China, you get below the surface of everything going on, you'll find out that they actually are not as strong as you might think they are. It just so happens to be that we have politicians, Joe Biden in particular, who's paid off by China to do China's bidding. That's the real truth about it. They're only about as strong as we allow them to be. But something else, too, that needs to be said about tariffs is that you can actually fund the government itself on tariffs. And the reason why I say it's kind of hypocritical for Cenk is because, like I said earlier, Bernie Sanders was actually in favor of some forms of protectionism. But now Cenk Uygur, all of a sudden out of the middle of nowhere, he's not okay with tariffs? Fascinating. Like I said, go back to the beginning of the video. Trump's no longer a coward, but yet the day of the shooting, he said that he was hit with a BB gun and basically put out the whole, it was a hoax thing, basically protected. His nephew, Hassan Piker, also helped aided in that as well. But then again, at the same time, though, we'll talk more about these people later on in the week. In the meantime, though, tell me what you guys think in the comment section. And, of course, if you found a way to check Cenk again, please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.